Hi everyone, welcome to Psyched. And every Wednesday at 12:30 Malaysian time, we bring together thought leadership with regards to psychological experiments and the application of that in the workplace. And joining me today, although she just had her vaccination shot, but Andrea Chu, as always, will be joining me. And Andrea, welcome to Psyched. And over the last number of weeks, I think we started to garner a little bit of a following, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about the Stanford Prison experiment and how environment can really shape and tweak you. And for those of you who don't know, you can catch our previous episodes in the earlier in our YouTube channel or on LinkedIn. But it's very interesting and intriguing, right? How depending on the environment, right, you start to behave and you start to act in a certain way. And we've seen that in the workplace too, right? When you shape a workplace and you create a culture and you create a structure in certain ways, right, people start to behave very differently from one workplace to another. And that was the Stanford Prison experiment. And then we studied a couple more experiments, which led to last week's discussion on Martin Seligman's learned helplessness, right? And learned helplessness is very interesting, right? It's where we learn over a period of time because of cues and because of habitual behaviors that's been reinforced over and over and over again. We start to learn how to be helpless, even though, and this was a fantastic experiment done where they allowed dogs and they keep punishing the dogs. And after a while, even though there's a big opening, there's a big door for the dog to escape, the dog just sits there and accepts the punishment, even though there's an opportunity to escape. And sometimes we as human beings, we are like that, right? Even though we have opportunities in front of us, maybe not immediately, but it starts to slowly avail itself. But we go into this phase of learned helplessness and victimization. And today we've got a great guest. And Andrea, tell us a bit about what we're going to talk about today, because I think today it's really going to go deeper into that space and trying to understand some of the experiments or some of the psychological imperatives that have been done in terms of depression, in terms of this whole pandemic psychology, where in a pandemic like what we're experiencing right now, we're talking about suicide rates increasing significantly. We're talking about depression rates. We're talking about all kinds of I would say illnesses, right, that are cropping up, right? So, Andrea, tell us a bit about pandemic, the psychology pandemics that we're going to talk about today.
Sure, Roshan. I think just to give an understanding of what pandemic psychology is, basically looking at what happens during the pandemic, right? There's a lot of mental health issues that's cropping up. We look at the rates; they're just skyrocketing, not just in Malaysia, but also other countries as well. Being stuck at home, being stuck in environments that we cannot escape in a way by the lockdowns and stuff like that. It has changed the way people are responding to the pandemic as well. And today we're going to dive a bit deeper on this psychology during the pandemic, and how do we get out of these situations, or how do we reach out for help, or even better still, how do we offer help to those we see struggling, especially during the pandemic. And I think we can start with a bit of the statistics. We've seen in Malaysia itself, we have about 500 cases of suicide in the last 2 years. That means early last year up till today. And those numbers has really skyrocketed compared to the times before. And it's interesting because a lot of companies or even organizations, they are putting a lot of how do I say, importance onto mental well-being and mental health of their employees as well, because we know, like, some people at home, when they can't stop working, that also leads a lot of stress, and it doesn't help when also some organizations do not know how to manage pandemic sort of working from home styles, and that adds a lot of pressure. And I think before I pass back to Roshan for his thoughts, I think one thing I wanted to say is, like, when I was looking up on Google early this week, I was just looking up how to get over something. The first line that pops out in the Google search is how to get over depression. And I was a bit caught off guard, because I thought it would be like how to get over your ex, or get over your horrible traumas. But this was very direct. It was how to get over depression. And it's very interesting to me. And one of the things that I came and saw about is that it says that research suggests that continuing difficulties such as long-term unemployment, living in abusive or uncaring relationship, long-term isolation, hint pandemic, or loneliness, prolonged work stress, are most likely to cause depression than recent life stresses. So I think that's something that I think is very apt to today's episode.
Yep. And today we've got a doctor in the house. We've got Dr. Sekar Jaganathan who will be joining us shortly. But before we get the doctor live, we have another doctor who wants to share a bit of her insights on pandemic psychology. So let's just watch this other doctor before we get the live doctor into the house.
Hi, I am Dr. Corinne Wrightens, and I am a family medicine physician who's been practicing with Mosaic Life Care for the past 12 years. Some of you might have heard about the increased rates of depression and anxiety in children and adults during COVID-19. Our children are definitely socially distanced from their friends and other family members, and there have been multiple studies showing that depression and anxiety is increased in both children and adults. And children will often exhibit depression symptoms a little bit differently than adults. As adults, we can frequently talk about feeling down and not as motivated and tired, but sometimes our kids will just not eat. They'll want to sleep more, become more moody, and want to stay in their room and not interact with family members. So if you do start to see your child exhibiting some of these symptoms, definitely reach out to your child. Let them know that you're more than happy to talk to them about their feelings. And if you really feel that their depression and anxiety is affecting their daily lives, you should contact your medical provider to get some advice on what you can do, whether that be some counseling or just talking to the provider about options that are available. There was one study that did show an increase in the depression as well as suicidal thoughts for children. And so definitely feeling the kids out to see if they're having any thoughts of self-harm, and if that does occur, they need to be seen right away by their medical provider, as that is a medical emergency. It has been my pleasure to share this information with you today. Please take care.
So welcome back to Psyched, and of course this show is brought to you by Budaya and also by Happily. So if you haven't checked it out, go to budaya.app or Happily. You'll be able to see Leaderonomics Happily as a product. We've got a special guest who's going to join us, but we've got a bunch of people joining us. We've got Sashi who says this topic is not talked about enough and is often brushed aside when someone kills themselves. I think we have to agree with that, and that's one of the reasons Dr. Sekar's with us today. We've got Ida who joins us every week from Seremban. Welcome, Ida, and glad to have you. And today we've got a special guest from Papua New Guinea, right? Hallelujah is here, and we're happy to have you with us, Hallelujah. And we will, hopefully this show will be useful to you. And again, Psyched is a show about how we tackle psychological insights and experiments potentially, and how that applies to the workplace and how that applies to our lives, right? And so without further ado, Andrea, you want to introduce our guest. We've got the amazing Dr. Sekar Jaganathan who's joining us. Tell us a bit about Dr. Sekar, Andrea.
All right. So Dr. Sekar is the author of this amazing book, Miracles of Life, and he actually he's one of our guests in Leaderonomics show as well. He's gotten on BFM and stuff like that. He's talked about a lot to do with hope, a lot to do with mindfulness, a lot to do with meditation, and of course he is with us today for volunteering to just come online to us. And I think this was a topic that was very important to him. And maybe let's bring him on, Sashi, and then he can tell us a bit more about himself.
Hi, good afternoon, Sashi,
Yes.
Roshan, and Andrea.
Yeah,
Hi,
welcome,
Dr.
Doctor, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. It's very interesting. I mean, we've got a bunch of guests who actually have some comments. But before we get to the guest questions, so tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up getting to the space of helping people in this turbulent, troubling times. And also ultimately to author this book.
Well, I've been doing this for the last 12 years. So about 12 years ago, in 2009, I took a sabbatical break from work, ironically from Kenanga also at the time, and for 30 months. And I went into meditation and wanted to find a life answer for myself as well. And during that process, I also I started 7C Life Realization Center, which we also have Happiness to Life also later part. In this journey, I understood there were many people with the same kind of issues and similar issues among themselves, and I started to do counseling and helping them through meditation and one-to-one counseling, and also group sessions, and also to get away their emotional traumas and all sorts of things. And one of the patterns that I saw, that their problems were the same, but they didn't know it was the same, right? So what the book was actually to give, to act as a guide for them, to talk about it, because many people, like what Andrea said in earlier, they feel very lonely and they think that problem is theirs alone, so they are afraid to speak. So the book, when they read the book, they feel connected to the book, because they believe that, hey, he's talking about me. So I combined all those stories with the same sharing, same kind of situation, and put them into different chapters of different, like, relationship, happiness, stress at work, and all those things, right? And with that, it touched a lot of people. The book went all the way to US and Australia, UK, for, yeah, of course, in Malaysia as well, for people to actually connect, and they actually change their life for better, because they could speak through the book. They know that people have resolved their issues. There are issues, similar issues, and they are not alone in the world with their same issues. So that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Sekar. Just to give you a heads up, Roshan is dropping off to come back in again. But I have a few questions, I think the first one is, what are your thoughts about hopelessness in general? Like the people that you speak to and the things that you've seen. What is the common similarities that you've seen with people with this hopelessness?
Well, I think the reason why people feel hopeless is because they're never appreciated. We have this society. We live in a society where people think that saying thank you and giving you a hug or appreciating what you have done is a given, granted. So we don't express it as much as we should do. Even at home, many people don't hug their parents or even their own siblings. And when you do something wrong at office, your bosses are more often to get angry with you for the mistakes, but are lesser and stingy with the comments to appreciate you. So this over time creates a situation where they feel that they are not good enough. They're not good enough. So when they're not good enough, they feel that there's more that they need to do in order to be accepted. There's more that they need to do in order to at least fit in, right? So that unconsciously drive a state of hopelessness in their mind. So that's dangerous, actually.
Yeah. Okay. And that's very interesting, right? The need to belong, the need to fit in is also part and parcel of being human. We're very communal beings, community is so important to us. But I mean, I want to, poke you a little bit further and ask you a bit more, right? With for example, what I understand about meditation and mindfulness, it's also a connection with yourself, right? Because if we are going to always depend on wanting to fit in or belong, then that's very dependent on other people. But mindfulness is also being connected with self and being dependent on that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, mindfulness takes you to that stage, but it doesn't start with the state of connecting to yourself, because you are very right. We are very communal, right? So whenever you grow up in life, from the day that you sit, you're actually programming your mind. What are you programming? What is right in life, right? So when your parents tell you don't play with fire, you will still play with fire, right? So there are a lot of advices that come from a lot of people in the society that you think it's true, but when you play with fire, when it burns you, that's your truth. So if you look at it, there are your personal validated truth, and there's also truth in your mind that is validated by others, but you actually didn't experience, but you took them as truth as well. So this drives you to become a person that needs to fit into society's requirement of what is right rather than what is right for you. So meditation is a practice where you sit down, breathe, right, and watch your mind. How are you reacting? What are you reacting for? Are you reacting right? Are you reacting right for you? Or are you trying to satisfy the rest of the world? So because that what is right with you is based on the society's norm and not based on you. So the whole idea of meditation is to remove the clutter that is deciding for you, which is not actually what you want.
Okay. And that's very interesting because last week, when we talk about learned helplessness, we said something about regaining back your narrative, right? Regaining back your control, regaining back your power in your story. And to say that, do not let other people decide for you. So that's very apt to what you're saying. And it's very interesting. One of the quotes I've seen about meditation was that it's funny that breathing is the only source of life that we have in a way. And we so often forget that we are doing that. Something of that lines. And when I was taking my vaccination yesterday, we had to do an observation for 10 minutes right after vaccination, and all of us were just sitting in our own little chairs. And that's why I realized I never had actually time to sit down and not do anything over the last few months. And I took that 10 minutes to do a bit of meditation in a way, to look into what's going on at the back of my head, at the back of my thoughts, right? And all I could think of at that time was, I want to get home fast. I want to rush through, right? And it's really tough. And I think one question a bit more specific to the corporate side of things, like in working world. They say that when you're working, it's like you're climbing the ladder very fast. You are always rushing to be on top. It's a rat race, right, as they call it. And what do you think? How does that affect, our hope, our self, and how we enjoy and be present in life?
Well, if you ask about work life, right, I think we all have to have goals in life, even at work. We want to achieve something in our life and everything. But normally what we do is we are pressured by time, and we are also pressured by peer. And somebody else will come new to the organization, and they will be in a higher position than you, and you will sit there. I think what we do wrong at work is that we do the work and we expect our bosses to know the work we have done and also understand the goals that we have and the aspiration that we have. But we rarely speak out about our expectation and aspiration to the boss. You didn't join a psychic organization for the boss to go home, have a dream, and then think, oh, this is what you want in life and I'll do it for you. You have to be expressive. In an organization, you have to express what you want. You have to be expressive in your work. You have to be actually talking. This is different from demanding, right? Expression is talking about your thoughts, your goal. So that if you are in the right organization, they will build your aspiration with your career plan. I've seen I've been with organizations that do that, right? But if you keep quiet and you expect the whole world to deliver to something that's in your mind, but you don't have the courage to speak out, then you are putting yourself in that stress mode, work pressure for no reason, because your expectation is different and it's not tied to what you're doing today. So because of this mismatch, you are stressed at work. And what you do today will never be delivered right, because you're not in the work that you're doing now. Your mind is away something else with a different expectation of the future.
No, and I think you make a very good point, Dr. Sekar, about the communication, because I think, and I've read a couple of studies that talk a little bit about how many of our issues that we have in the workplace is unresolved conversations. And part of what you're saying, I think, is that, right? It's unresolved conversations. I haven't really had a good conversation with my boss about my expectations and what I want out of this. Or likewise, the boss sometimes doesn't communicate fully downwards into the full extent of the outcome that they're looking for, and rather the how to do something rather than the why we're doing it. And then there's this unresolved tension that is created because I don't know why he asked me to do this. I have no idea, blah, blah, blah. And so there's this unresolved conversation. And I think a lot of it, as you say, stress builds up as time goes on, and one bit of another slowly builds on. I'm going to just take a couple of conversation elements from some of our audience. And Esther says, I agree with you, Andrea. We live in a very fast-paced world, which sometimes we forget to just sit down and be present in the moment. I think Dr. Valen joins in the conversation and says, true, I'm often pressured by time. I think this is in response to what you were talking. And Sashi talks about He once burnt his prayer room, and it's good to know, Shashi. I think there's a good question from Ida, and her question is two-pronged, right? Starts with, how about those who are self-employed entrepreneurs and families that have many children? How do they plow through this pandemic? And a follow-up question is, there's news about big families who share ICT gadgets among 7 siblings to do their school homework and all these different pressures that mount up. How should one think about resolving problems in that scenario?
Okay, let's talk about relationships. I think this, whether it's office or home or whatever, is relationship. I think when we talk about the two-way communication, this is what we don't realize that we do with our mind. It is called a psychological contract. So let's say, Roshan, you give me a resume of somebody, right? Or you give me a resume of one staff comes and give me a resume. Boss, I want to, can you help me get this job? So as a person, we are Asians, we are very courteous and very friendly and very nice. We'll say, let me look at it. Now, let me look at it means I don't have a job for you, but I will keep it there. If somebody asks, I'll do, but there's nothing that I'm going to do for you now. But we don't say that sentence. We'll just say, let me look at it, right? But the mindset of the person who's receiving the other end will say, he's going to give me a job in the next 1 week. He's going to come up with an answer, right? So now it's a timed psychological contract that was never said, but is in the mind. Why? Because we are being nice, right? So after 1 week, the guy who gave the resume will now start to pressure. The person who said, let me look at it, doesn't know the psychological contract exists and will go on with his work. And then there's frustration, there's anger towards him, right? Unknown. Nobody knows that he was by this trigger. And it goes on. Then he goes to talk, that guy is very bad. He doesn't keep up to his word. For that particular resume sharing, everything else becomes prejudged. And that's where relationship breaks and you create unknown stress. Now, this happens even with family, with mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws and siblings and everything. It happens. And even when whether you're self-employed and everything, this communication, we want to do things and we take our intention of getting the right results as the hope and expectation. When somebody says a slightest good thing about it, we say that they're going to deliver the whole thing and we set that expectation. And that's why we pressure ourselves with time, like what Dr. Wayland said, right? And now when we do this time factor in our head is the one that's creating the pressure, because bills or whatever expectation, I need to do this. But we don't sit down and say, if I remove the element of time, how else can I resolve the problem? They will find a solution. Because time is there, they put self-inflicted pressure that I need to get this done. So they limit themselves to the choices of solution that they can have. Right? So this happens. Now, in terms of time management, of course, you have to do certain things. Now, when I do my style of time management, I don't go by the hours, I don't go by the months, I don't go by the dates, I go by days. Because days are fixed. I plan everything by days. Mondays, this is what I do. Thursdays, this is what I do. Fridays, so Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, I work. So anybody asks, I don't have to check anything. I say I'll be at work. I have no time for that. So I know on Saturdays what I'll do and everything. So this 7 days in a week is how you do your time management, because it's there. Don't do your scheduling here. Write it on a piece of paper, task list. That's it. It's actually quite simple, and it's in the book. In my book, there are guiding points in my book, how you can actually read the story. And also at the end of each chapter, there's guiding points that you put it into practice, you'll automatically resolve your issues.
Yep. And I think that's a very, very important point now, that I think sometimes there is a way out, but we box ourselves into this pigeonhole, and ultimately it just the box becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and ultimately it looks like there is no hope. And I think that's a big piece of why, at least from my perspective, and maybe you can correct me, my perspective is when people lose hope, that's when they start to say, I give up and I want to throw in the towel, and I kind of say, I'm surrendering. But whenever there's even a small little light at the end of the tunnel, we will fight on. We will continue to plow through, right?
Exactly.
And I want to share a quick little clip from our good friend Dwayne Johnson. He's a good friend of Andrea, I think. So I thought maybe and maybe I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this hope-based approach that Dwayne takes. So let's watch Dwayne.
You feel like it's only you, and you're in your bubble, and I wish I had someone at that time who could just pull me aside and, hey, it's gonna be okay. It'll be okay. So I wish I knew that. Just gotta remember, hold on to that fundamental quality of faith. Have faith that on the other side of your pain is something good.
Welcome back. And, this whole concept of hope, right? Dr. Sekar, I think you addressed some of it in your book also, right? I think. How do we get to this point of having at least a light, a flicker, that at least we can unbox ourselves? I think the practical way is don't put yourself in a box. And that's being proactive about communication. That's being forthcoming and forthright and honest and transparent, which is very un-Asian in terms of our communication and culturally sometimes not acceptable, or at least we perceive it's not acceptable. But once you're in that box, right, how do you aspire to get this sense of hope that can unbox you from this chaos?
Okay, I'm going to answer this in two parts, right? Let's talk about, before I go to hope and faith and belief and everything, let me talk about the box. The box is actually very much invisible to many people. You have two categories of people in the world today who are going through depression. The people who have not made it and the people who have made it and lost it, right? We are seeing more suicidal from the people who have made it and lost it, because they have achieved something for themselves. And they should be proud of themselves. They have done that very well. But it's a lot of ego, not bad. I'm saying it's so much of problem for them to actually come out and say, I need help. So that box is actually the ego, right? And that's how we are solving that ego problem, by just raising a flag for people who want to ask but cannot ask, right? So I think we need to say that I need help. That's the first thing that you need to say in order to break the box. That's the only thing that you need to do, because every help is already there. That's the hope that you need to believe in, right? Now let's talk about hope. A lot of people talk about hope, faith, and belief, but they don't know the difference, right? I used to love the word hope, but now I don't like the word hope. Let me tell you why. When we used to start with hope, when we say, I hope this can be done, I hope this can be will work out well. Now, when we talk about hope, we already have an element of 50% failure and 50% that it will happen. So the 50% failure is coming from our negativity that we also putting there. So I know that there is more highly chances that it will not work, because that's what I've gone through. But because you say, I'm going to hope that it will go through. See, you don't have the belief system when you use the word hope, right? So you're not going to cling on to it yourself. You're just going to hold on to it for the other person's sake, and you're not going to do it anything for yourself because you're not believing in it. So first thing that you need to do is forget about hope. Believe that all of us are created to succeed. Why do I say that? We all believe in divine powers. We do, right? Now, if I ask the question, do you believe the divine can go wrong? Everybody says no, divine can't go wrong, because everything has to be perfect for the divine, because that's why it's divine, right? So now, if you are a creation of the divine, that means you can never go wrong by design. You are designed to succeed. That's the belief you should have. Whatever happens, it's something for you to reflect, to learn how to do it right, and now believe. That's the foundation that you have to move forward. Faith is saying that you will never fail, because why? Of the design. You will never fail. That faith only comes with to a lot of people when you have nothing else to believe in other than the belief itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's well.
Yeah,
I think that's really well said. And I've got somebody, veteran, who says hope is almost as synonymous as a try.
exactly. Yes.
And I that question that's out there is, if you are the Prime Minister of Malaysia, what will you do to tackle these issues? Tan Sri, Dr. Sekar.
Well, if I was the Prime Minister, to tackle this issue is make the people the most important part, not about the aid, not about what we are doing. Talk to the people, understand the people that's needed. This is a time where we need to do collective responsibility. The people who are suffering the most are also the people with the right solution, right?
Yep.
So bring them in. Because they feel it, they know what to do. You don't feel it when you are sitting in a comfortable space. You can give a solution, but you have not gone through the problem yourself. So your solution is very theoretical, but it's not practical. So there are a lot of people, bring them in, talk to them, understand. We have 222 representatives who are representing 10 to 5,000 people. There are 10,000 to some places 60,000, right? But there's so many. Open up those and talk to people, and then to do a collective effort. We have My Sejahtera for the vaccination. Why can't we have an app to talk to people, to get people to tell what their problem is, and we can execute it rather than doing things. You see, one of the things that I do, I employ some people now. I'm looking for people, right? One of the conditions that I told my staff is, please give priority to people who don't have job. People who are looking to jump work, even though they are the best fit candidate, find for somebody who doesn't have a job, because they need it more. And they will be more committed to working with us rather than the one who's jumping the job. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what it works both ways. It's not like I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It's understanding the emotion. And when you can create an emotion bond with the people will be, the problem of the people will be resolved. That's what I would want to do.
Yep.
Of course, whether I become Prime Minister or not, that's a different issue.
Yeah, and sometimes it's of course easier said than done. But I think you're absolutely right. I think there needs to be a sense of, and of course there are many key issues. Not so simple as it seems, but I think Yin Peng, thanks for your question. It's as Dr. Sekar says, I think how do you instigate and inspire that sense of belief, that sense of hope in the nation that there's a way out, and then chart that path, right? Enable that path to happen and ultimately get there, right? So a couple more comments, and then I will get to Melvin says Dr. Sekar is correct. We should focus on people who need a job now. It's beneficial for company as well to have immediacy vacancy filled up. I think the other piece that you wanted to talk a little bit about is, and I think there's some questions here relating to your book. Here's a quick question from Dr. Villain. He says, look, I want to find out how can I get a copy of your book. So we will show you a copy of your book shortly. I think it's this book over here, which is Making Miracles for the Self. And Dr. Sekar, how do we get a copy of that book? Where can we get that?
It's actually MPH online, and also we can send you a link that you can order through the center, and we will get somebody to actually courier to you, and you can pay online as well. It's at we'll before the call ends, we'll share the link.
Okay, fantastic. And Andrea, you wanna also mention a couple of things?
Yeah, sure. I think I want to jump a bit more about the difference between seeking help and to a point where you can't seek help, right? And you know what Dr. Sekar mentioned, something we mentioned last week, sometimes we don't realize there's a cage around us. It is invisible, but people outside might be able to notice. And this is where the community side of things make things happen. Because if you were to look at somebody and you realize something's very off about the person, not their usual self, either they're very down or they're just, they don't have an appetite to just socialize, or just, really, really different. I think that's one key thing to look out for, right? And this is something that a lot of people who are in depression, especially the severe depressive illnesses, they've mentioned that at that point of time, after they've come out and they share their story about, their depression and stuff like that, they say that at that point of time, it almost seems like they're in a black hole that they cannot see any light, right? There's no light at the tunnel, nothing. Until somebody stepped into your life, like, doing the Rock Johnson said, if only somebody pulled me out of it and aside and tell me it's going to be okay. I think that's very important. I think my perspective is coming from the people outside of what's happening, right? Not just for yourself, but other people. I think is to look for these symptoms. I think Sashi can show a bit of the symptoms of depression, losing their appetite, sleeping a bit more or sleeping very less. It's completely opposite of their normal day-to-day, continuous low mood, sadness. So these are some of the symptoms of depression that you can find. And as you dig deeper into the types of depression, there's a lot of different other types of symptoms as well. So if you see people around you, whether it's colleagues or family, just something really off about them, try to reach out and talk to them about it. And I think the important part is also a lot of people have this stigma, right? The stigma that if you seek for help, then you're crazy, or you're really something wrong, or you're really completely out of your head, right? This stigma is very prevalent in Malaysia. Interestingly, even in the psychology department, students don't seek for help because they think it's this whole issue, right? So we want to drop in a list of helplines for you guys. If ever you find somebody who is in need of that help, try to get them to call. Or one of the another ways to help is that you go with them. You go with them to therapy, at least the first few sessions. Help them get comfortable with these things beforehand. And I think to top it off, I think the most important part is being very empathetic. And I think I would like to point out what Dr. Sekar mentioned just now. One is being appreciative of the people around you is very important. Saying, hey, you did a great job today. I am proud of you. But don't give wrong phrases that it's not real, right? Be very genuine and be very empathetic to these things. I think it's very important. And that's something that we can do, even though we're not therapists or counselors. Being there to just listen to somebody is very important. And lastly, there's something very interesting that I found out about. I think it was Ida who mentioned, what happens to kids who have to share one ICT gadget among 7 siblings, right? Interestingly, this is where the system comes into play as well. A friend of mine who's in an international school, they're revamping the whole school system to have 0 homework in the virtual space. And I think that's a very bold and brave move to help not have these kind of stresses, right? So they do their activities in class and that's it. There's no homework after that. They don't need to use their laptops to do all these kind of weird things that they have to do after school. No. So I think that's where the system comes in. If you're in education or even our government, the Prime Minister, it is your responsibility as a person who is in the system to change it, right? To change the environment, to help people move along. So yeah, I think those are my thoughts.
Sure. And getting some great comments, amazing sharing by Dr. Sekar, practical, easy to implement and workable. And I think Yin Ping also says thank you for very practical actions. Our leaders should also practice this, and keep your comments coming. And Dr. Sekar, as we wrap this up, right? And one of the things, if I look at some of the stats, it's quite alarming, right? Not just depression or kemurangan, as is mentioned. It's 500,000 Malaysians affected. Almost more than close to 3%. And as we look at some of these things, right? There's some practical tips, but if you were to leave all of us, because it's something that I think can afflict all of us, right, at any point, at different points in our lives. But what sort of practical advice would you leave us with as we wrap this show with regards to how, and you talked about the box being 2 types of boxes, right? The ego-based box and the hopelessness box, right? Where people just cannot pull themselves out, right? Maybe in these 2 categories, right? What sort of advice would you impart to these 2 folks? And I think the more interesting observation would be, these boxes are you're talking about individuals, but I can also see this collectively as organizations. where organizations that one were at the top and suddenly, boom, it's a fall from grace. And likewise, organizations that have been strutting along, sort of making it work, and now suddenly look to have, at the point of demise, right? So I think it's equally relevant to individuals as much as organizations. What sort of advice would you impart to these guys?
I think the first thing that you need to do is for people, right? Family is a very important factor because at workplace you can't hold or hug somebody kind of thing, but at home, right? You really need to actually talk to each other, hold hands. Even loss of job or loss of livelihood or sustainability is something that's a reality that's happening now. The family circle needs to be supportive to say that, okay, let's see what we can do. That word itself is very, very important. There is help everywhere, one way or another, but not everybody is have the accessibility to that. So if you don't talk to your family, or if you don't talk to your circles, nobody's going to know that you need help, and they're not going to share. They'll be sharing a lot of chats and WhatsApp that's going here and doing here, but the expectation to many people is you need to go and contribute rather than receive. So people are not going to get involved. So I don't have the means to contribute. Actually, look at the other way around. If you have a need, pick it up and go and look at it, right? So you can also receive and contribute. That means contribute your services and receive the goods if you need it. It's empowering for you to give something as well as when you receive it, so you don't have to feel bad. For organizations, right? Okay, so for a family part, again, many family only notice this when it gets bad, right? You need to share the love today. Even though there are no signs of depression, you need to do it. So this, we will also share our link. Call us. I have more than 10 life coaches who are ready to speak to you and listen to you. If you're alone, nobody wants to talk to you or nobody wants to listen to you, we will listen. All we will do is listen. Just speak to us. Let you speak out, right? And for organization, right? Mostly these are the small organization. There will be one sole proprietor with a few staff. Remember, to the sole proprietor, it's a business. To the staff, it's a family environment. They could have gone for a different job. So the sole proprietor need to come real with their financial standings. I can't last for the next 6 months. But if you share this information with your employee, I can't last the next 6 months. I want you to look at it rather than telling them at the end of the 6 months, right? They will say, okay, boss, most probably we will take a half pay cut and we will do this for the next 1 year. But don't stop there. Sole proprietor will say, okay, let's try to do this together. Let's convert it. I will give you some part of the shares of the company so we can build it together. Rebuild as a community. Don't struggle on your own. It gives hope for the people to become entrepreneur. It also keeps you sustained as an entrepreneur. Try. If you don't try, you will never know.
No, that's I think very good advice. I mean, I think one of the things we did at Leaderonomics also is that, right, convert a lot of our pay cuts into employee shares and getting them to be owners in the business, right?
Yeah.
So I thank you so much for the practical advice. I think there's a couple more questions. I think one from Mohan, and his question is, how does meditation actually improve our emotional state? I mean, he's a little bit confused in regards to how it works. And I see a couple of people responding. I think Dr. Valen says that, he does yoga every day as part of a way. And then I think another piece we didn't talk about, feel free to give what you can, take what you need. I think giving is another great way of practicing a form of meditation, right? When you give, you kind of throw away all the excesses, and it helps in many, many ways. But your thoughts on how actually meditation works?
Okay, so let's talk about the emotional trauma first, right? So whenever we go through circumstances or situation, our mind is a very reactive mind. So what we will do is we react to it. The immediate reaction to that reactive mind is an emotional trauma, emotional reaction. That emotional reaction, if it's negative, becomes a trauma, right? So now what meditation does is to clear the mind, become very mindful. So you convert your mind from being a reactive mind to a responsive mind. So you don't allow yourself to have an emotional reaction. You just say, I don't need this. Thank you very much. You're able to say it. You know how to filter what you don't want. And then that will help you to bring back your emotional balance. And what would you do is when you have lesser of this friction, lesser of this expectation, lesser of this prejudged notion, lesser of this negativity, the only thing that your heart is meant to feel, the only emotion that is meant to feel is happiness, happy. Learn how to be happy. The way you can be happy is just to breathe. Feel the air in your lungs. Feel it. You can feel sensation like this, but feel the air and fill the lungs, right? At that moment that you fill your lungs and everything, you don't have space for anger, hatred, jealousy, judgment, revenge, and everything. See, you feel good at that moment. Use it as a habit. In my chapter 7, it talks about creating happiness as a habit, right? And there are guiding points for you to use from that chapter to make it a habit. And that becomes your character. When you become a character, no matter what nonsense people throw at you, you will not be affected because you have that happiness in you. You have the belief that you're designed to succeed, and you will empower yourself. And you not only you will do that, but you'll empower everybody around you. You will ride on that success of that empowerment that you have created in your environment and atmosphere.
Fantastic. And Andrea, your final thoughts as we wrap this up and close this segment out today?
All right. So I think I have just one quote that stuck with me all over the 3-4 years ago. It's something a lecturer who said this to me. Andrea, give happiness a chance. So I'm gonna give that to everybody here as well. Give happiness a chance. All right. So I think that's all I have to say for the end of the show, right?
Yep. And Dr. Sekar, thank you so much for your time here with us. We're gonna wrap up as always. We always kind of show a little video. And today, as we wrap up and as we close out this show, we're gonna share a little bit of stories from the soul. So there's a minute or two. Let's kind of wrap it up. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great week, Dr. Sekar. Thank you so much for your time, your input, your great advice. And I think a lot of good nuggets of insights that we can practicalize in our life, but also for our organization. So have a great week, everyone. Happy Wednesday. And here's some soul stories for you.
Oh my God, I might get emotional. Okay, the biggest thing I want to tell you is that it's okay to struggle.
For anyone who is out there struggling, know that you're not alone. There's other people going through what you're going through too.
Being good to yourself. I think sometimes people don't give themselves permission to honor themselves and be good to themselves.
What you feel is real, and it matters.
Right now, you might be feeling like there is no way out, and you might be feeling like your only way out is to end it all. But by doing that, you're robbing yourself from the opportunity to find happiness and to realize how beautiful this life really is.
Give yourself a break. Take some time off, even if it's just for a day on the weekend or something.
Be patient with yourself. We all go through hard times, and don't let anyone tell you or discourage you from what you're going through.
When I went through what I was going through, I had such a difficult time with my parents because they didn't know how to communicate with me about it, and I didn't know how to communicate with them about it. The world is so big now. The internet is there. There are resources. You just have to know what the right questions are to ask and figure out how to find the people that are going through the same things as you.
Get off the couch. Just get off the couch. I know it's so easy to sink into it when you're feeling crummy. Force yourself on a walk. Make sure you're moving your body, whatever that looks like. Dance, yoga, hiking, football, anything. Just move your body.
Whatever it takes, go get help. We live in a place where you can get help. If it takes 5 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, just wait patiently. Don't give up. Don't give up on your life, because you will eventually be the person you were before. Trust me on that.
I just want you to remember that you can create something from the pain that you're feeling. You can help people. In the midst of all of it, just love yourself. Be patient with yourself.
These are things that make you wonderful and unique, and develop the personality and develop you into the person you are meant to become, and know that you are loved and you're special and you're wonderful.
Every day I'll write down the things that I'm grateful for, and when I'm in those dark places, even if I don't believe it, I will just look at that list and say it out loud and remind myself, It's going to be okay, and you have so much to live for.
Be good to yourself. Forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. You deserve it. It starts with you, and I promise it'll get better.
Find people who care. And if there is no one who does care, stick up for yourself and advocate for yourself, because you're worth it.
Things will start to happen. Motion will start to happen, and it's never, ever, ever going to be cut and dry, easy, black and white. I'm anxious, I feel better. Like it's never going to be that. But at the end of the day, it feels so much better to move forward than to stay stuck.
Have a great Wednesday, everyone. And that's the end of Psych. Goodbye, everyone.